Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And today we're going to be talking about the self-titled debut album from Mura Masa. Okay, I'm going to walk you all through the strange series of events that led me to cover this album. As many of you know, I'm a big fan of Shura, whose debut album last year, Nothing's Real, was one of my favorite records of 2016. It's awesome, easy. So when I saw that she was going to be featured on an upcoming project from a British DJ called Mura Masa, I was really curious and excited to what she would bring to the table. Now that's a stage name for Alex Crossan, who might have started off in punk and pivoted more towards the sleeker, trap, and tropical house leaning sounds that have been pretty popular recently. And once he got signed to a major label, he started pulling together a murderous row of guests that included Charli XCX, A$AP Rocky, even Damon Albarn of Blur for this debut album, but Shura's collaboration song was nowhere to be seen. And I gotta admit, I found this pretty damn frustrating, as I'm not normally the type to seek out this sort of electronic music if I don't see strong names on the track list. You kept a song with Designer, who I'm fairly certain will never have a stable career in the near future, and yet you pitched the Shura song after filming a music video for it and everything? Okay, maybe it was because that single that was released back in October of 2015 in order to drive up some buzz, but still, it struck me as a really misspent opportunity. But hey, this album was on my schedule this long, it got up to the top, and the reviews have actually been fairly decent, so what did we get from this self-titled debut album? Well, honestly, I'm a little bit conflicted on this, mostly because I get the impression that there was a seed of an interesting or cool artistic direction inside this project, but either through a muddied creative process or a lot of executive meddling, and given Shura's exclusion, I'm guessing it might just be the latter. Mura Masa turns out to be a bit of a hodgepodge of a record, both sonically and in terms of any overarching theme. Now, part of this I discovered is that it was pulled together from singles and tracks from EPs that go back as far as 2015, or may have shown up previously on other projects. But it does lead to a listening experience where, again, there's a sound that could work conceivably beneath this, but it desperately needs some real focus to come together. In other words, while it is pretty decent in isolated bits, it's not really great as a whole. Now granted, this is something you could expect from some electronic projects like this, especially with those with an influx of wildly varying guest stars. And Mura Masa, to his credit, at least tries to put together production that flatters each singer, even if it doesn't really wind up as cohesive as a whole. Now there is some consistency. Overall, much of the tones, be them driven on the guitar or synth or marimba or steel drums, they fit towards the watery, tropical variety, which tends to be an interesting fusion with a set of typically fast-paced, rougher, borderline lo-fi beats that wouldn't be that far removed from more aggressive brands of hip-hop. But I'm not gonna deny that following A$AP Rocky over tropical production complete with air horns, to fluttery marimbas opposite Charli XCX, to designer opposite sound effects that were cribbed from Future's commas and a pretty generic flute line, all of which leading into a lo-fi acoustic interlude complete with auto-tune, it can give you a little bit of whiplash from track to track. And that's before you get to the songs that call back to 80s funk and disco on the second half of this album. And again, it helps that most of the guest stars acquit themselves pretty well. Designer, he's got more to work with here than Future had opposite Calvin Harris at least. And though much of this sound is kind of outside of A$AP Rocky's typical territory, he handles it pretty well too. He sounds better against this groove than I expected. And when you factor in how well Neao's delicate vocals work on Firefly, or how Bonzai's cool confidence is an easy fit opposite the grooves on Nuggets and What If I Go, or how Damon Albarn just perfectly nails that melancholy of Blue, a lot of these songs pretty fine fit. The two guest performances though that jump out at me the best are Jamie Lidell on Nothing Else for bringing an impressive amount of real swagger to that song, and especially Tom Tripp stepping up to give that bleary-eyed British flavor on Helpline, which is easily my favorite song here with the prominent bass melody and that ridiculously tight groove. Catchy as hell song. If you want to find one song from the project you should check out, it's that one. And it's also a shame that then for the rest of this album, it doesn't feel nearly this tight or have that same sense of groove. And while there are definitely points where Mura Masa himself kind of gets in the way of that, I mean, the almost obvious are his auto-tuned vocal additions that come to the forefront on the solo track Messy Love, or overlap with Albarn on Blue when they don't need to be there. But you also need to consider some of the production as well. Like most tropical house producers, he's got a bad habit of abusing pitch shifting for breakdowns and drops, and it just gets kind of stale at this point for me. And I can't say I'm all that much of a fan of the watery effects placed around Charli XCX X's more strident voice on One Night, most because she doesn't need them. They don't flatter her at all. And when you also consider that a lot of this production feels pretty minimalist, there aren't really a lot of blending between the percussion and the tropical tones and the synth funk grooves. So much of it that the reverb that shows up on Who's It Gonna Be, it can feel a little bit out of place for AK Paul, even if it does work to make that groove pretty damn good. At least the songs where it can feels like there's a lot going on in these tracks, especially with the faster percussion, but it can feel kind of fragmented. And yes, part of this is inevitable due to the genre shifts from song to song and a track listing that could really flow a lot better, but I still think within individual songs there could afford to be a little bit more cohesion, even if I do tend to like a lot of the grooves on songs like Nuggets and One Night and Nothing Else and Helpline. So okay, can the lyrics pull things together? Well, okay, here's the thing. I get that this was pulled together from a couple EPs from original material mixed together, expecting a thematic through line, not really expected to come through here on a debut. And again, it's electronic music. You can excuse a lot in the writing, but I gotta be honest, there's a really ugly tone to a lot of the writing of these songs that really does not rub me in the right way, that feels both presumptuous and oddly petty, where these girls are icy shrews that never understand and yet still want this guy, and all the guys are sensitive and humble in their success, and yet seemingly unaware of how unwittingly creepy or douchey some of their lines can feel. Messy Love, first example, where he's pleading for the titular affection, but he never wanted the girl to try him, but she never took the hint, she never got the clue there. And it comes back again on Give Me the Ground, where he tells the girl not to blame him, give him some ground to stand on, but for her to struggle when I'm gone, that's all you deserve. Wow, okay, that's attractive. And when you follow it with two songs from female singers about unrequited love, it sets up this weird sort of dynamic, especially when later in the album we get Who's It Gonna Be, where we get lines like, every day you deny me, love gets stronger, and how he's more of a wild card than her current boyfriend who she should leave, and every step you take backwards, I get closer. And when you pair it with all of his pleas for her attention and guidance, it just gets really creepy. Now, thankfully, the album's not all like this. We're not quite at Chainsmokers level of self-aggrandizement, but still, that's more because Designer can't stay on topic to save his life to get there. And A$AP Rocky's more concerned with pure hedonism, and Tom Tripp and Jamie Lidell are more concerned with the sticking to the grooves than feeding into some sort of weird relationship power dynamics. It honestly could have been worse. But as a whole, you know what, it's hard for me to judge this project because, again, it feels like a bit of a hodgepodge of a debut. Mura Masa doesn't really seem to be reinventing the wheel when it comes to tropical house. Most of the tones he introduces, Jamie XX and Kygo have brought with more atmosphere and groove, but there is a rough sense to groove to the better songs that I can certainly appreciate. And if the lyrics had clicked a little bit better, I'd probably be much more forgiving in this and it'd be a much more likable project. For me, light 6 out of 10, recommendation, but I'd focus a lot more on the grooves and a lot of the tune here than the writing, which is exactly which will hold over a lot of tropical house fans anyway. So yeah, with this, you know what, there's potential of this. I'd be curious for more, so yeah, take a look. Not bad. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. I'd like to like and subscribe, I'd be more than grateful. I know it took me a little bit of time to get to this, but it was kind of a curious record. I'm happy I covered it. Beyond that, anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, I'm all ears. If you want to buy the album, links in the description below. Got the poll up there. I'm curious where Mura Masa fans off the singles fall on this album as a whole, so there's your opportunity to tell me. And if you guys want to get involved in my scheduling, link to my Patreon is right there, where 3 times a week you guys get to vote on my schedule, and once a week the higher tier contributors get to add records or even movies to that schedule. More details right there, but till then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.